everyone, welcome back to Jurassic World Evolution 2. Today's video is part 1 of my Jurassic Difficulty playthrough on the Germany map. There's quite a few additional hurdles to consider on this map. Those include nature and luxury guests only, no carnivores, genomes only unlock when you hit 100%, no genetic modifications are allowed, the disease risk is severe, there's only one staff center allowed, and we're limited to only 10 species. So in part 1, we are just going to get our main buildings built and some of our research started, and of course our first dinosaur, the Struthiomimus, into the park. By the end of this episode, we won't quite reach 1 star, but we will be pretty close. This beginning area, or this time in the game, is probably one of the most risky times when you're playing a Jurassic challenge mode. It's easy to run out of money if things don't happen in the proper order. So first things first, it's really nice in Jurassic World Evolution 2, you can pause the game and kind of take stock of what you've been given to start out with. So you can check out your scientist skills and which scientists are available to hire. But one way or another, in most cases you're going to need to start off with a research center and an expedition center so that you can start getting research done and start getting more genomes. On some of the maps you may not need an expedition center because it gives you live dinosaurs that you can go tranquilize and put into exhibits, but in this one of the limitations is that we actually need 100% genome before we can do anything at all, so we need to get an expedition center up right away. Unfortunately, we have to use that power generator, which is extremely costly. We want to replace that as soon as we can, but for now it's a necessary evil. Hopefully we can get everything done before we need to fill up the fuel with that. Again, since there's no wild dinosaurs, we need a hatchery, and we need to get our Struthiomimus genome to 100%, so I'm just trying to figure out the best place to put our opening buildings to save space for later. Ideally, we're going to have a monorail very close to the entrance, so you always want to try to leave some space for a monorail close to the entrance. Alright, so here I'm picking up a new scientist. He has the cheaper research skill, which is great, but he also only has 3 genetic skills as his only points right now, so I actually end up only really using him for decoding the fossils that come back, but I'm hoping that he will be useful later on in the playthrough. A lot of the initial research uses the logistics skills more so. So like I said, hopefully the cheaper research from him will pay off a little later. But for now, we're sending out our expedition to get Struthiomimus fossils, and we're building our first enclosure, a nice little 2x2, which is actually a little bit on the small side for Struthiomimus. Believe it or not, I end up having to make it a little bigger right away to get them at 100% comfort. One thing to note here, so I'm putting down that general viewing gallery, but that actually only attracts the general guests. It does not attract the nature or the luxury guests, which are the only 2 that actually come to the park. So you'll see that it works, like guests do go into the viewing gallery, but by the end of the playthrough I have exchanged it for a viewing platform because that attracts the nature guests, not the general guests, which apparently just don't want to come to this park for some reason. Okay, so we're extracting our Struthiomimus DNA, and that'll get us to 100%, I believe. And next we're using our logistics skilled scientists to research the power station so we can get rid of that backup generator as soon as possible. And then once we get a dinosaur in the park, it's kind of crunch time. We need to get the response facility followed by the paleomedical facility researched as soon as possible, because the game is basically going to slap us with a disease as soon as it can. That's just how Jurassic Difficulty works, unfortunately. But now we've got the power station down, so once I figure out where I want to put the pylons, we can get rid of that backup generator. So that's a nice, that's a big step in the right direction. We were able to get everything powered up before we had to refill the generator. Now that we've got our backup generator destroyed and power is going throughout the park, it's time to incubate our first batch of Struthiomimus eggs. Remember, these guys don't attack each other, so we don't need to worry about the social dominance traits that they can manifest. So here are our first dinosaurs in the park, and now that they've been moved by the helicopters into the enclosure, we are able to research the response facility. I don't know if you saw, but I was trying to use the cheaper research guy, but because he has no logistics skill points, I could not use him, which was a little bit annoying, but it's all good for now. Time to get our amenities in to increase our rating. Now that there's actual dinosaurs in the park, guests should start coming in. Unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, because that viewing gallery only attracts the general guest, we have way fewer people coming in to start with, and our amenities actually are not making a profit for quite a while. I do leave them down there to keep the park rating a little higher with the food, drink, and shopping ratings going up, but because of that, it's not attracting the nature or the luxury guests. I think that what was going on was not as many people were actually coming into the park because of that. So it looks like we got our response facility researched, so now it's time to get the paleomedical facility up as soon as we can. It looks like I did not have enough of the welfare skill, so I'm curious what I'm gonna do next here. Looks like we're gonna build the response facility first so that we can get the dinosaurs monitored and everything. And we're gonna smooth out that area there because putting down the buildings and having the terrain jump up everywhere has always been a huge pet peeve of mine. So let's check on the comfort level to see what I mean. The 2x2 is a little on the small side, or it's just barely big enough. I know I make the enclosure bigger right away because in challenge mode, if the dinosaur comfort isn't like basically at perfect, they have a risk of getting sick, and the only way to fix it is to make the habitat perfect for them. So it's a good idea to try to make the habitat as close to perfect, if not perfect, as possible. Looks like here we're recruiting another scientist so that we can actually build the paleomedical facility. And if I recall, that is a very good thing because I'm pretty sure we get hit with a disease like as soon as it gets finished being built. Right here I'm trying to optimize the amenities, which is not going too great. I think it has something to do with the fact that the viewing gallery only attracts general guests, which don't exist on this map. But in the meantime, we can research some of our core guest buildings, so the emergency shelter that will help increase our rating and hopefully get more people in the park. And we can also incubate some more Struthiamimus as well to increase our overall appeal. So we're going to select all of those eggs and get them incubating. And in anticipation of the higher dinosaur count, we're going to make that enclosure a little bigger also. Okay, so I think we got our first sick dinosaur already. Thankfully, we were on top of things with the paleomedical facility. So I've paused the game and I'm picking out where I want to actually place this so that it's optimally placed. One thing, it's really annoying, but the ranger vehicles and the paleomedical facility, if you face them the wrong direction, they take a really long time to get going. I'm actually taking manual control here just to speed things up a little bit. I want to say that this dinosaur ends up having, is it rabies maybe? Let's see. Avian pox, I think. So normally I think that there's all these kind of random requirements you need. So some of them are like take a picture or quarantine the dinosaur. So I was actually kind of lucky. The two that got sick were far enough away from the other group. I was able to quickly build a mini paddock and isolate them. And then you can actually pin the research, and the timer will count down on the side there for you. Very handy. That's a feature in the game now. And so thankfully this first disease was averted pretty quickly, but if you did not have the paleomedical facility and the disease came up and let's say you were short on cash, there's really not much you can do besides watch the dinosaurs slowly die from disease, unless you just happened to have something lucky happen, like an easy contract or the black market egg random event where you can sell one egg and get like $1.25 million is another thing that can happen. But so yeah, we're driving out to cure two diseased Struthiamimus, and believe it or not, this is not our only bout of disease in this episode. Another dinosaur gets diseased toward the end, and I actually have to fly that one out of there into a makeshift tiny paddock to isolate it from everybody else. So we're about to get one of the kind of lucky random events here, the black market selling of the egg. So in most cases it's probably worth it to take that huge sum of money this early in the game. Later on it's probably maybe not worth it, but as you can see in the bottom right, that's our sabotage meter. It only went up about halfway. I actually think we get off pretty easily and nothing bad happens to us, and we got the $1.25 million, which is huge this early in the game. So next we're trying to put down an attraction to increase park appeal. It'll also help draw in our nature and luxury guests. I had to kind of reorganize the pathing to fit it, but it's going to be right there next to our amenities, which is very nice. And we have some more Struthiamimus to put into the enclosure. I think we're about to be hit with our second disease. This one was a little more troublesome to deal with. It's actually kind of goofy. If you have the dinosaurs come out with the resilient trait, it's nice because they're less likely to get diseased, but then it almost guarantees that you will need to isolate any dinosaur that does get sick, because some of them with the resilient trait will probably never get sick, and therefore the entire paddock will have some that can get sick and some that won't. So right here I'm trying to build a nice little isolation quarantine zone with the hatchery, and it didn't work, so I just decided to build a small little enclosure over there so that we can tranquilize and move the dinosaur safely. It has to be quarantined for X amount of time, and I think this one I needed to take a picture of it as well, which is why we just briefly took direct control of the paleomedical transport vehicle and took a picture. Now that the Struthiomimus has been moved, that timer will start slowly going down. I remember for some reason this research takes a long time, and I actually had to keep I kept the paleomedical facility vehicle over there myself manually for a few minutes, so I'm just gonna skip past that. But other than dealing with this disease, and I think there we go, we're putting in the viewing platform to get rid of that viewing gallery, because the platform actually attracts the nature guests who exist on this map, unlike the general guests who have been snapped off the face of the earth somehow. So once that's in, I'm going to get rid of the viewing gallery, and I probably won't build any more of those for the rest of this playthrough. And we're also getting started on our next dinosaur, which unfortunately is going to wait for part 2, but that's going to be the Nasutoceratops in part 2. Okay, looks like that disease got researched and is now able to cure the Struthiomimus, so we can move it back into its enclosure. And that is mostly going to wrap up part 1. I hope you all enjoyed this. As you know, it's tough, but if you can get through this, you're pretty set for the rest of your challenge mode playthrough. And I'll see you all next time.